Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki hosted the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni at Łazienki Park in Warsaw. The most important topics under discussion included economic cooperation, security, migration policy and protection of the European Union's external borders in the context of the war in Ukraine and the upcoming NATO summit in Vilnius.
We need to clearly define our priorities because there could be many more of us in the future. That being said, the European Union cannot regulate the tiniest issues in the lives of its citizens. Europe should focus on thinking broadly, on charting a broad strategy. And this brings me to the principle of subsidiarity. That is, let Brussels not deal with what Rome will do better, and let Rome not deal with what Brussels can do better. I believe that this Polish-Italian alliance will be strengthened precisely in other countries. Soon country number 3, 4, and 5 in terms of population, that is Italy, Spain, and Poland, may just be governed or co-governed through forces based on tradition, on common sense, on realism. But forces, for example, in Italy and Poland have proven that we can manage the economy in a common sense way, respecting the expectations of all sectors of society.
Donald Tusk uses fake news and accuses the government of allowing more than 100,000 migrants from Muslim countries to work in Poland. In reality, visas allowing work are granted to only a dozen to tens of thousands. The leader of the civic platform has even undergone a metamorphosis and become a hardline supporter of border protection. During Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's visit to Warsaw, not only security issues were raised in the context of the war in Ukraine and the upcoming NATO summit in Vilnius. The Prime Ministers of Poland and Italy discussed the European Union's migration policy and the defence of the community's external borders. I would like to say that I understand Italy's stance to have the exterior EU borders strongly protected. This is also Poland's stance. This external dimension of illegal immigration is a key one. Our position is substantially the same. We want to stop illegal immigration. As long as Europe thinks about solving the problem by discussing how to handle illegal migration when it arrives on European ground, we will never find a real solution, because the interests of our nations, even simply for geographic reasons, are different interests. The problem of illegal migrants from Asia and Africa emerged in Europe almost 10 years ago. In 2015, the migration wave peaked. Tens or even hundreds of thousands of people from the Middle East and Africa tried to enter France and Germany illegally. When it turned out that the vast majority were not refugees but unskilled immigrants seeking a better life, it was decided to forcibly relocate these people to the rest of the European Union. In 2017, Donald Tusk, while serving as President of the European Council, threatened the Polish government with consequences for not accepting migrants. He has certain arguments. I am able to understand them, but this will inevitably involve certain consequences. These are the rules in Europe. Today, Donald Tusk changed his mind 180 degrees. For the purpose of the election campaign, he suddenly became an opponent of forced relocation of migrants. This is 2022, more than 135,000. You know that Law and Justice issued more residence permits than France and Germany combined. The opposition leader is misrepresenting and manipulating the truth, Law and Justice politicians say. A residence permit is one of the steps in the process of issuing a visa that allows legal work in Poland. Ultimately, a visa is granted to a dozen% of applicants. 16,000 people from these African countries. And these are actually verified, vetted people who come legally. Donald Tusk accused the Law and Justice Party of wanting to allow up to 400,000 immigrants to stay through an ordinance. However, the former Prime Minister is manipulating the facts. In fact, it was a decree of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs which assumed that the number of visa applicants would be at least 400,000 per year, which does not mean that so many people would come to Poland. The authors of the project justified it by the growing interest in obtaining a visa for the Polish labour market. However, work on the project has been put on hold for the time being. This is a manipulation because these numbers do not apply to people who come to Poland.
statystyki pozwoleń na pracę dla migrantów.
It is being said that the statistics of work permits for legal labour immigrants were low at the time when the Civic Platform was in power, and they are high at the time when Law and Justice is in power. Mr. Donald Tusk, they were low when you were in power because before there was no work and there was no need for it. And today, in connection with the fact that there is a lot of work and the economy is growing, there is a need for more hands to work. Meanwhile, Deputy Minister of Development and Technology, Piotr Uściński, points out that there is not and will not be government approval for forced relocation of migrants. Moving people, forcing them to stay where they are, keeping an eye on them in camps so that they don't accidentally return to another country. This is not humane treatment, and we Poles will never agree to it. I don't know at all why such things are considered in Europe. It is worth recalling that the Civic Platform criticised the construction of a barrier on the border with Belarus, despite the fact that the crisis on Poland's eastern borders was caused by Belarusian and Russian security services. The change of stance on migrants surprised even the media that favour the opposition. PO leader scares people with Muslims and regains control of borders. Donald Tusk or Donald Trump already? Human rights activists and defenders do not leave a dry thread on Tusk. Disgusting and premeditated political gamesmanship, cynicism and following dead bodies to their goals, and lack of elementary knowledge about migration and refugees are just a few of the long list of accusations. At the invitation of Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki, consultations of parliamentary circles and clubs on forced relocation of migrants and the EU migration package will begin tomorrow before noon. The recent riots in France have shown European societies what the mass and uncontrolled admission of immigrants can lead to. According to preliminary estimates, the losses amount to €1 billion. The Polish government's position is that the decision on whether to accept migrants should be made by Poles in a referendum. According to some commentators, Donald Tusk has received permission from the European People's Party to be able to criticise the European Union's migration policy, but only for the duration of the parliamentary elections in Poland. If this formation gained power, it would follow the instructions of Berlin, and Brussels for that matter. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced on Tuesday that the Israeli military's operation in the Jenin refugee camp, which had been underway since Monday, had come to an end. The Palestinians said military operations were continuing. This is Israel's largest military operation in 20 years, with more than 1,000 troops involved. At the moment, we are completing the mission, and I can say that our extensive action in Jenin is not a one-off. We will continue operations, if necessary, to root out terrorism. On Monday, the Israeli Defense Forces announced the launch of extensive anti-terror operations in the area of the city of Jenin and the refugee camp there, which is considered a bastion of Palestinian militants. The camp is home to militants from Hamas, Islamic Jihad and the Fatah group, among others, but also houses thousands of civilians. In recent months, Jenin has become a haven for terrorists, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu argued. The Israeli army relayed that 3 explosive laboratories were located during the operation, in which some 300 finished charges, explosives and means of making them were found. In response to the Israeli forces' action, a spokesman for Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas accused Israel of war crimes. The clashes resulted in the deaths of at least 11 Palestinians. 2 months after his coronation at Westminster Abbey, King Charles III was officially recognised as the ruler of Scotland at a national Thanksgiving service at St Giles Cathedral in Edinburgh. King Charles III has been in Scotland since Monday, when he attended the ceremony of the keys in the courtyard of Holyrood Palace, and in the evening was the guest of honour at a reception on board the Royal Yacht Britannia. Yesterday he co-hosted, with Queen Camilla, a reception in the garden of the Scottish residence of the British monarch. Today at around 2 p.m. the coronation ceremony began in St Giles Cathedral in Edinburgh. King Charles received the honours of Scotland, the crown, sceptre and sword of state. After the service, 21 cannons were fired from Edinburgh Castle. The royal retinue then proceeded to Holyrood Palace. The coronation in Scotland is meant to symbolise the bond between the royal family and the Scottish people. The first ruler to be crowned twice, once in London, the second time in Edinburgh, was Charles I. In 1625, after his coronation in Westminster Abbey, the Scottish Parliament asked for a similar ceremony for the monarch in its northern kingdom as well. The ruler travelled to Edinburgh in 1633 to be crowned at Holyrood. The tradition was halted after the coronation of King George IV in 1822 and reinstated by Queen Elizabeth II in 1953. That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.